Mediocre Rumble Brothers. 3, 2, 1.
Alrighty, welcome to Mediocre Rumble Brothers. I'm Jordan, your host, and the team Corey, Edwin, and Udon. Today we'll be talking about character design in video games. Before we start, please be sure to follow us on Spotify. That really helps us out to get us going right in the good direction. So we're going to go ahead and start with the very first question. So what games have some of the best character designs and some of the worst? Concord. But go ahead and discuss amongst yourselves.
Like, I understand that Concord is easy to just jump on because it's, well, obviously that's like the most recent blunder, I suppose. But I wasn't really a big fan of like the art direction for Veilguard either. I don't know, something about it. This character seemed very plain, and I know going back to like Dragon Age Origins or something, the graphics might not be, I guess, as good if you go with like character model wise, but like the details and stuff made it. Like, I like the art style that they went with in Origins over Veilguard, just because it felt more gritty, I suppose, where everybody else looks like smooth and painterly, I guess. It just seems more like friendly to approach for a game that's about like a cataclysm.
I mean, yeah, I think, Veilguard's issue is the fact that when I saw it, I was like, what Pixar movie is this? Um, I think
Yeah.
I think a weird comparison to make with Veilguard is actually Zelda because, uh, I think people I have an issue with it because old characters don't look like how they used to. Like they almost look like completely different characters. You wouldn't even notice that they didn't tell you what their names were because of the huge shift in art direction. And there was a similar upheaval when Wind Waker came out, when they were shifting to like this really cartoonishly chibi art style as opposed to Zelda's like semi-realistic graphics that had up to that point, or at very least, more akin to actual proportions than what Wind Waker was. The difference is, since Zelda has this thing of like every game is like its own thing basically, just even though Zelda, Link is still Link, but this isn't the same Link as you played in Ocarina of Time, technically speaking. So it had a better time going over, and we look back on Wind Waker now, positively, and everyone loves Toon Link to the point he has, he's on his own Smash Brothers characters, and those graphics hold up really well, those character designs. But Veilguard's just changed it so much that, I look at Morrigan and I'm just like, that's not Morrigan. It doesn't look anything like Morrigan. That's just a different. You're telling me it's Morrigan, but I don't believe you.
Oh, so it is a mainline game. I thought it was a spin-off or something. Because
Well,
it's
it
like none
kinda
of them are
looks
like
like that,
actually
right?
No,
numbered.
it's a mainline game.
Okay.
This happens after Inquisition. Uh, I mean, for me personally, I mean, here I go again, dunking on Scarlet and Violet, but I generally didn't like the art direction that Scarlet and Violet did. Like some things look fine, but like ultimately, like the player characters and stuff like that just don't look nearly as good as they used to. The graphics, I mean, it's weird because if I look at the 2D art of the game, like the concept art for the characters and stuff, it looks fine. It looks like Pokemon to me. It looks great. But then I look at the 3D models of the characters, and some of them look fine, like Iono or like Larry and like Rika and characters like that. But especially the player character, I just don't like how they look. And like a lot of the random NPCs also are like really boring to look at. They're just not interesting. Whereas like all the other Pokemon games have like this really. I mean, you can just look at the main. Even if we're talking about like even still the concept art, like the Pokemon. If you look at the the main characters you can play as in Pokemon, the male and female protagonists, like they have so much more personality and life in all the older games as opposed to Scarlet and Violet, where it's just like they're both in these really ugly school uniforms, great. Whereas like every other game, like the male and female look radically different, even between like Black and White 1 and 2 when you play as different characters. They're like have so much more personality in how they look. I prefer going back and playing the DS games where I couldn't even customize my character because they look better than the Scarlet and Violet people did. But just kind of talking about graphics at this point, but if we're talking about like less graphics, that more like like the inner workings of a character. That was a big thing that I didn't like about Mass Effect Andromeda, because the graphics in those games looked the same as other Mass Effect games, but I think no one latched on to any of the characters because they were like so hollow. Like they just didn't feel real. They didn't feel interesting. And I wish I could say more on the subject, but I didn't really play a whole lot of the game because it just made me angry to play it. I didn't want to play the rest of it. But like PB and stuff like that, like the new Asari, I'm just like, you're Liara if Liara was cringe. Like that's all I thought when seeing that character. When Mass Effect has notoriously had, fantastic character work that I'm probably gonna praise a lot in this discussion, but they're like, even it's like, here's a Krogan. I'm like, you're not Grunt and you're not Rex, and it's not because you're not Grunt or Rex, but because it's like if you're Grunt and Rex, if they weren't interesting at all. Like I don't even. The only thing I remember about the Krogan that you had in that game was the fact is like, I'm old. I'm like, that's cool. That's great.
One of the character designs that I really like is just like pretty much like the entire Zelda series. Like everyone is just like a little bit back and forth from like the original Zelda style to much simpler to a lot more complex depending on which game you play. But like even like the character species in the game like drastically change from each game, but they like across all of them they all look really nice, but they all still look very different from one another. And you can still tell like who's who. Like obviously the Rito and the Rito and the Zoras and the Gorons and all that. They like they look the Gorons like changed the least, but like the Zora and the Rito like they all drastically changed design entirely. Like in Wind Waker, they're like more human like, and then in Breath of the Wild they're more bird like, and they're like there's like some different species of each kind. Like some of them have the tail on their head and some of them don't. But it's like you can still tell like who's who, but they all still look different in their own unique way.
Yeah, the Zelda franchise has pretty awesome like character designs in general. Like one of my favorites is the Twilight Princess. Midna, the Twilight. The game itself is just so atmospheric in general that like they really capture it with the gritty art style that they were going for. I love Link's like outfit. The Zora armor in that game is really cool looking. And then you can go over to Wind Waker, and it's just like super funny because Link is so expressive, and it's just kind of silly. But overall, like that game was also very fun. And it fits the like tone though because Wind Waker is whimsical, and Twilight Princess is so dark. So like both of those art styles really match the games and the characters well, and that one. And then Wind Waker kind of developed that art style across like many other Zelda games that went to handheld, like Minish Cap and the Train, Spirit Tracks or whatever. So that's kind of cool.
Hourglass.
Yeah, Phantom Hourglass. Oddly enough, so in some games that I think have like really awesome like character design is like the Final Fantasy franchise. Outside of like a handful, it's really weird because once they got to 7 has cool characters. They're not like their costuming isn't necessarily the greatest, but the characters are neat, like personality wise, and I guess like for looks because of it's kind of steampunkish. But then you get to 8, and then everybody's kind of just like a regular person, and there's some like Zell, I think is just a weird character, but in nine's art direction I think is really neat. I know that's kind of hit or miss with some people because they don't like the cartooniness of some of the characters like Steiner, but I think because they got like bigger heads and whatever, a little bit more stylized characters. But I think the art direction for that game and the characters are really cool. It's one of my favorites. But I liked 10 a lot. And Titus's outfit aside, which is kind of weird because you can't really say he's got belts everywhere because Lulu's outfit is a dress of belts. But I think that the characters in Final Fantasy X are like really cool and are super memorable. And all of their personalities are really good. Wakka's kind of annoying, but like he means well, and Kimahri's very reserved, but when you get his backstory, it's just kind of like you feel bad for him, even though he's like this big dude. He's the tiny one in the tribe. But like Titus's outfit's kind of just silly, I guess, with the weird shorts pants thing. But It just kind of fits his personality because he's just like a wild person. But Final Fantasy overall does have some killer character designs. And then you have 15, which the characters are neat, I guess, like personality wise, but their outfits and stuff are just like, I don't know. It's just jackets and pants. It's like, I don't really care so much.
Yeah,
I
Yeah,
don't know. I
was-
feel like that's
was-
lazy design, I guess.
Was I'm sorry, I phased out for a second. Was that the one you're just describing, the fucking Linkin Park Final
Yeah,
Fantasy?
yeah.
Yeah. I don't even like Final Fantasy that much, but when I saw those guys, and I always joke saying it's Sasuke and Linkin Park going on an adventure, but I'm just like, I can't even tell the difference between all these guys. Like, they're all just wearing black. I don't get it.
I mean, like the game itself was, it was okay. I didn't really like their level up system, but like the world design was really cool. The monsters looked really cool, but I just didn't like the characters as much as I past installments of Final Fantasy in general. Like Zidane and his crew in 9 are awesome. Cloud and Tifa and Barrett and all of them are like really cool characters, and even like the entire cast basically of Final Fantasy 6. But 15, it's just kind of like it's not really that memorable either because I can't really recall a lot of it. I played the game like all the way through and everything, and then it's just like I think he was upset because I watched the movie first.
Well, let's because I mean, as a comparison to that, again, I didn't play it per se, but when I look at a game like what was it, the one that they made 100 times with Lightning as the main character. I mean,
Yeah.
well, Lightning was so well liked, she became a fucking model icon for
Yeah.
what was the company that did that?
Like I can't remember. It might have been Gucci or something, but I think they
It's-
used her like character model for like dresses and outfits and stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
literal. Well, she was like a literal. No, she's a literal fashion icon. I literally remember when I lived in Tampa, the International Mall down there. I was walking through it, and one of the fucking one of the clothing stores, one of the models that was in the window, like wearing some of the shit, like on like a piece of advertisement, was Lightning from Final Fantasy. Like I remember seeing it distinctly.
yeah,
That's
it's around the time
fairly
Lightning
specific.
Returns came out because that game was basically just her and all the different outfits that she has. Which I will say that I did like that one. I did like the way the battle system worked, and all of her outfits were really cool. Like Lightning is a really cool character. Hope, he's kind of meh. He's just like a kid in kid clothes. And then, Snow's pretty
Fucking hate
cool,
him.
but there's a lot of cool things about the designs of the characters within Final Fantasy 13. I think it just kind of suffers from length in storytelling, I guess, because like you don't even get to do anything in 13 until like hour 30, I think, and finally you get to make your own choice because the game is very linear for the most part for an RPG game because they're just trying to drill this story into your head about God knows what. But Lightning Returns, yeah, she's not even the first Final Fantasy character that made like magazines and whatnot, like a regular character. Because I think the main girl from Spirits Within, the Final Fantasy movie, which kind of tricks you into going to see it because it has nothing to do with Final Fantasy. She was in Maxim, I believe, and the whole thing was about like how realistic her hair was because she had a million strands of hair for a CG model on screen, and that was like amazing or something like that, which is kind of funny. But yeah, that movie is its own thing.
I
I
guess
mean, as far as go ahead.
I was gonna throw something out there. It just out of the loop, but mine is gonna be, I guess, because I'm more involved with fighting game genres, and I know that like Tekken itself is kind of plain compared to if other people were to jump in, it would just be looking like regular people. One that really stood out to me was the Killer Instinct franchise. I mean, even though it's quite an old game, but just seeing the designs of what they were, you have these crazy looking werewolf, you've got the raptor, you have this full gore, this robot android, and you have this guy made out of fire. Like the designs that they made for them to go up against each other in fighting was pretty cool because it just looked like, as much as other games are, just normal people are fighting each other. This one was like creatures and such, and I just liked the design. And if you had played the one for the Xbox, I think it was Xbox One or 360, it was one of the two. I think it was Xbox One. That they basically just improved the graphics and they added a lot more characters. Unfortunately, that game is extremely expensive because they definitely wanted you to pay out the ass for those packs,
All
those
the guest
season.
fighters and
Yeah,
stuff.
it'd be like almost $30 a pack, and there's like 4 or 5 of them, and I'm like, whoa, dude, chill. So you'd be paying for almost like over $100 for just the game to fight people, and I get that that doesn't really work out too well if you don't have friends that are very competitive, or you just don't have friends in general. It's not fun. But
Friendless.
yeah, you're lonesome. But
Yeah, I mean, especially fighting games have to make characters that really stand out at a glance. I mean, with Killer Instinct, the first thing that pops in my head, I'm like, they just have a fucking raptor. There's just a raptor
Yeah.
that fights people. The same thing with like Tekken. I'm like, there's just a panda that beats the shit out of people. Or there's King. It's just a guy running around with a jaguar on his head. Fucking Mortal Kombat has Sub-Zero and Scorpion are so fucking iconic because their blue and yellow coloring is very distinctive. And
Yeah.
but so like fighting games have like a really important emphasis on character design, because that's the whole fucking game is the characters, like second to game mechanics. But so you have to make them stand out. And I mean, I don't even play a lot of Street Fighter, but I can name like probably like half the roster of that game without even thinking about it. Fucking Bison, Chun-Li, Ryu, Ken, all that shit. Fucking sumo guy, what was Dalzim with his
Yeah.
rubbery arms
Honda,
and shit.
yeah.
Honda. Like, you can name all these characters and I hardly even touch any of these games. And but my example of a game that I literally bought just based on a character design alone, fucking call me a gooner if you want, but like I saw Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and I saw Pyra and Mithra and I was like, bye. Never played the first one, still haven't played the third one, don't care. I saw those characters and I was like, I need to play this game right now. And I ended up really liking it. I mean, maybe one day eventually I might go in back and play the other Xenoblades, but like that's just an example of how character design by itself made me go out and buy the limited edition of that game just because I liked how those characters looked. And I ended up finding a lot more about the game that I liked after the fact, just because I was drawn in by their character design alone. So
So
There's-
go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
So it's like there's like for Resident Evil 4, which is one of my favorite video games. I'm pretty sure I might have mentioned this before. But like the difference, it's like it's a downgrade from the original Resident Evil 4 to the remake. Like I still like the remake entirely, but one of the biggest downgrades in character design is a much more serious Leon. And the original, he was much more quippy. He was funnier. He was a little bit light. He was lighter hearted in serious situations. Kind of like he was like a Spider-Man kind of personality. But in the remake, that was like completely removed. So took everything extremely seriously. He didn't make any of his usual quips. It was just a downgrade in character to me, because that's like one of the lovable points about Leon as a character. Like everything else about the game, his physical design is still more or less the same, but also the design choice for Ada makes more sense. Whereas like her red dress is changed into a red sweater dress with much more like tactical gear that's visible. And like it makes more sense to like for that kind of design change. I'm just like actually kind of like it more than just the regular red dress. It seems like a pretty generic like character design for an Asian character in a game. So like the new design I kind of prefer a bit more.
that they did that. Well, when we were playing Silent Hill 2 and we saw
Maria?
his made up wife or whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't play the original game, and Tim was telling me that she was wearing a different outfit, but I actually prefer the remake outfit, which sometime and it's like they do update outfits. I mean, I like female characters looking good, but sometimes it's a bit too much. A la I kind of like some of the redesigns for Mortal Kombat's female characters as well. But like when I saw the quote unquote sluttier dress for the character in Silent Hill, I'm like, yeah, I like the redesign. It looks better. It just makes more sense, because it doesn't draw you. You're not paying attention. That's not the only thing about the character. What are you saying, Corey?
Well, it's kind of funny with her like character design in general, because like I know what she's supposed to represent, because she's supposed to represent like the lustful thoughts that James has, but her character design is like generic prostitute outside of gas station.
Yeah.
So it's like
So
leopard print. That's a
yeah, it's
thing.
like, can we have a bit more thought into how they look, please? Thank you.
All right. So, what games have great character designs, but the game series just never interested you?
I think I almost answered that. Final Fantasy, for the most part, I've always think has had cool characters, but it wasn't enough to draw me in. It wasn't like Xenoblade in any way. Um, if you want me to, if you want me to answer a game series that I still think has amazing character design, but the game is fucking balls, is Overwatch.
Hmm.
That again, that was a character or a game that drew me in almost solely based on the character design, and I still think the characters are the only good thing left about that game, is that you can still appreciate about it. But um, yeah, that game's being held afloat by its character design.
Yeah, I
kind
could
of
definitely agree
follow
with that because Overwatch, it's oddly enough, there's a lot of Blizzard games because I don't really like. I didn't game on PC growing up, so like I didn't have the attachment to Blizzard games like a lot of other people did. But like World of Warcraft, the art style and art direction they use, like I love the cutscenes and stuff, and like the Overwatch characters are really cool, and the World of Warcraft characters are really cool. But I tried WoW. Me and Jordan actually were playing it together. I think we got to level 13 in the original release of WoW. I still have the box for it. Um, but I just was like, I can't do this. Like I know I had friends that were just cracked out for years on it, but I just didn't see what it was. I was like, I don't get it. You just click and then he goes and does stuff and you're waiting for it to be over. Which is funny because I played Final Fantasy Online, but I do have a soft spot for Final Fantasy, so there's the
Yeah, that
bias.
shit's
But
great. Yeah.
yeah,
What
I
about
mean,
you?
if you
Oh, go ahead.
if I would say, I'll go ahead and answer again real quick. It's tangentially related, but because it's a board game. I will never ever play Warhammer tabletop. I adore Space Marines. I will play it in any other context except for the original, game that it's based on. But go ahead, Jordan. Whoever you were.
No, I was just gonna say if Edwin had anything that he wanted to say himself.
Yeah, before this episode, I was trying to think. It was like I can't really think of anything specific. It was like I could agree with Overwatch, but I did actually play Overwatch, and I did enjoy it for a little bit. But the only thing that I liked were like the it's not really something that like I really go for, but they just did a good job on it. It's just like the variety of character. It's like I just like the idea of it, but like the execution is not for me anymore. Like it was good when it came out, but it's like now it's more or less dead to me.
Yeah,
I guess.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna
No,
say
go.
that I guess I was trying to do the same thing, just thinking about what possibly might have been for me, and I know that I had a history of playing the Disgaea series, like trying to get into it, even though because I fell in love with the very first one, played the hell out of it, but then right after that, it was just trying to trick myself into just believing that you loved the first one, why not love the rest of them? And I kept trying to keep going forward. I know Corey had the second one. I believe I got the fourth or the fifth one. I don't know. There's so many out there. But
Yeah.
I tried to pick right back up on it, and I was just like, it just does not feel the same. The character designs are kind of similar, but they're just not the ones that I fell in love with. So I just could not move on, and that game basically ended up being traded in later on. But yeah, that's kind of one of the series that I was hoping the best for, but it just didn't work out.
But sorry, but before we go to the next question, actually something did pop up in my head. It's like a lot of people like it. I'm not really sure. I'm not entirely sure. I'm sure it's more the show more than the games, but Digimon. As like I never really cared about Digimon, but like the character designs for all the characters are really cool looking. And while I like the idea of like transformations and things like that, the uh, like the transformation, the evolution, and all that. The only one that I actually did like was different from all the others, which was Digimon Frontiers, which I only really liked specifically because it was more Ben 10 like than Pokemon like, where like the actual person or Digidestin or whatever the hell like actually transform into the Digimon. Because the thing that I just couldn't get around was just the wild transformations that any one Digimon can go to into just like something that doesn't even
Right.
doesn't even look related to like the previous evolution, kind of like Pokemon does. It's
And
kind of
I,
like the weird transformation from Dragonair to Dragonite, which is just like now is like you kind of just accept it, but before it's just like this. It doesn't even look like the same Pokemon as before.
I mean, I kind of like that because it separates itself from Pokemon in that sense. I'd hate it if everything was just some different take on Pokemon. So in the sense that like it can't, because I mean, some of them do. I mean, obviously you can see the through line between like Agumon, Greymon into Metal Greymon into War Greymon. You see the through line there, but
Yeah,
like
it's like some of them make sense, but not all
Angemon.
of them. Yeah, the fucking loaf of bread with wings that evolves into a fucking
Whoa,
sexy
whoa,
angel
whoa.
makes no sense.
Yeah, hold on. First of all, I don't know what you're complaining about. Second of all, like I think it's kind of because you're like the way I look at Digimon games because I've always given them a chance. I've always really liked Digimon, so I actually have played a few of the games. And aside from, like Digimon Rumble Arena, like the fighting games. When I'm talking about like the RPGs where it's
Tiger
kind of their like response to Pokemon. I've always kind of thought to them was like they're Pokemon's, Sonic the Hedgehog. It's like they're trying, but they're not ever going to be the same quality as their competitors, and they need to stay in their lane, sort of thing.
Well,
Because like you can have like sorry, I'm
no,
gonna
it's
finish
okay.
my
It's
thought.
good.
Because like in those games you have like a team of like 3 Digimon, and how it works is that like again, if I have an Agumon, when I level it up, it can digivolve into like 3 or 4 different things. And yeah, one of those options is Greymon, but you can turn them into other stuff. Based on like certain conditions. I kind of like that way since it makes it makes it distinct from Pokemon. Like there's a different way, and I have like options of different things I can transform into, and I kind of like the wildness because like I mean, despite the loaf of bread turning into an angel, but I mean it's cool. I like how it looks. I mean, I'm kind of fine. I'm not really questioning how we got here. I have other options if I wanted to, but I don't know. I kind of like how different it makes it. We're kind of wandering off into a different conversation, but what were you saying? Were you trying to say, Jordan?
Well, I guess I must have misunderstood. I'm really into the Digimon side thing. When I was a kid, that's usually was something I usually watched. I actually watched that more than I did Pokemon. I love the cards and everything a lot more than Digimon, of course. But I was under the impression that what Edwin was talking about, because there was a game that I had played for PlayStation that was Digimon, and the one thing that really bothered me about it, and maybe I have a bad memory, but I could have swore that the one that I had bought and had War Greymon on the cover, or is it War Greymon, but what would end up happening is you would start off as your regular very first evolution thing, and then you end up going up. But for some weird reason, the one that I was having, I was expecting to turn into Agumon, ended up turning into some completely different Digimon that just didn't make any sense. Like it just digivolved into something else, like Bearmon or whatever the hell it is. Like what this is, why did this happen? So it's just like it threw me off, and it kind of made me think that the rest of the Digimon games didn't really make any sense compared to like what the Pokemon games do, where they actually evolve to the correct Pokemon. So I didn't know how that was playing out for the rest of them, and that kind of like kept me away for quite some time.
Yeah, the designs individually are cool, but it's just like the connected parts between them is just a weird part for me that I just can't get interested in it. It just doesn't make any sense to me to like actually be interested. I like the growing and like adapting just like regular animals through evolution.
Corey, you got anything?
I'm good.
Okay, so I guess the next one is how does
I
the
have no strong opinions either way.
Okay, the next one is how does the design of heroes' abilities in recent games reflect their personality and backstory?
Can you repeat that?
How does the design of heroes' abilities in recent games reflect their personality and backstory?
Um, it's weird. You say recent games, but it's just like I had the first thing I actually, weirdly enough, the first thing I thought of was BioShock. Um, at least as a comparison between like the first and second game, because I mean, I'm just gonna go ahead and do my thought on it. The because the first game you're playing as just a guy who wound up in Rapture, right? You're just running around as like a dude. But in the second game, you're playing as like a big daddy, and even though you're like a prototype Big Daddy, you're still a Big Daddy, and you gain the ability to use your drill to beat the ever living shit out of people, and especially when you like unlock the abilities like the drill run and stuff like that. Like, it sounds strange, but I feel like a Big Daddy in that game because I have that drill and can run around beating the ever living fuck out of the splicers and charging around like the Big Daddies used to do to me in the first game when you see the fucking, the regular Big Daddies run around using their drills. So, like, just that one difference in abilities really, like, hammered home the difference in character for me. And I really felt the difference in that. And that's also kind of why I prefer playing fucking Bioshock 2 to Bioshock 1. But, as far as recent games go, um, I mean, I guess the second thing that popped into my head is Ragnarok, or God of War Ragnarok, because even though the games are so different from what they were before, like the weight of all your hits and how Kratos, he still has his executes and stuff like that, it still feels like Kratos. If anything, it's almost more brutal than it used to be. And I don't know. I think that having those heavy hits and how he handles all, like, you feel the weight behind all these blows. You feel how powerful Kratos is every time he does something, and I feel like that, obviously complements who he is and what he used to be. Even though there's such a drastic change in how the game design itself is, you still are very aware that you're playing as Kratos because of all the crazy shit he can do.
Yeah, they really did a great job in 2018 God of War because the axe is so like, yeah, he's like just beating the shit out of people and tearing people in half or whatever. But the moment that you get the Chaos Blades and the story beat is him having to go back to something that he didn't want to do, but he has to do it to rescue his son in that moment. When you start whipping the Chaos Blades from someone, because I've played all of them, like I love the franchise, and like when you're fighting with the axe, it's like unusual because this isn't what Kratos did, but this is just what he does now, and it's um he has to be more precise, though he can, I guess, summon the axe back to him. It feels like a more thought out way of like combat, right? Because it's like I throw my axe, it sticks in him. I could tackle this guy. It's more tactical, which he has become like a more thoughtful warrior rather than blind rage. But when you get the Chaos Blades back, he goes right back into that because it starts spawning a bunch of enemies because it's teaching you how to use them, and like there's just fire everywhere, and the aggression that you've felt in the old games is back, and it's just so cool how they introduce that to him. And the move sets are like the same animations, right? So like you're remembering where you came from and who you used to be in that moment, and it's just such a cool like part of the game. And I was lucky enough at the time that I didn't have that spoiled for me. So when he went back in the house to do that, I was just kind of like, holy shit, this is fucking cool. It was just such a great moment in that game. And like for him to have a new move set introduced that's, just violent in what he used to be, and it was like just amazing.
And also, I think another example of it, like just how he handles his abilities, is when you get the Dropnir spear, and you get it, and I think it's like Brock says, like, you know how to use that thing, and he's like, it's one of the first weapons a Spartan learned to use. And like as you were saying, he kind of goes nuts when he has the fucking the blades of chaos. But when he has that spear, you kind of see him go back, and like the way he fights with it is like very like regimented, very like disciplined how he uses it, because it's more of a finesse weapon. You can't like just swing it around and kill people. Just how he moves and stuff is drastically changed when he's using it. It's really cool seeing that in him. Were you when you thought of this question, was like the first thing you're thinking of more of like the hero shooters and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Marvel
I mean,
Rivals.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's. I mean, I feel like as much as I hate it, I feel like the question actually more pertains to Overwatch because it's like Marvel Rivals. You're working with the benefit that the characters are already pre-established and we already know how they work. Um,
Yeah, they
I
kind of
guess
make themselves, right? Similar to Smash Brothers characters.
kind of, sort of, yeah. And so it's like, I mean, if I'm gonna pull Overwatch out, I would say yes, and they also have kind of fucked this up in recent times. So I guess here's an example. One of my favorite characters in Overwatch, both design and to play as, is Roadhog. I love Roadhog. I love how he looks. I love everything about him. And Roadhog used to work in a way that obviously he used to be a side tank, kind of like Diva was. And his abilities were hook. He has a shotgun. He has a shotgun, and then he has this like a side shot with a shotgun where it goes slightly farther, and then he has his take a breather where he takes an inhale of like this gas mask, gas canister thing to heal himself, and that was it. But then they were trying to cram these like new abilities in to try and balance him. So now he has this thing where his hook isn't nearly as useful, but he has an ability where he throws a trap down that'll like slow people. And I'm like, this big ass character, this big brute, like just shoving people around with his hook, and he has this big old shotgun and stuff. Throwing this like a dinky little trap on the ground for people to step on just doesn't feel right because that's Junkrat's thing.
Yeah, I was like, is that
Well,
just Junkrat?
Well, here's the thing. Junkrat's thing is that, it traps him, and if you land on it, it'll hold you in place. Roadhogs doesn't hold you in place. It does damage and, like, slows you. But, like, because the idea is like now they want you to throw the trap on the ground and hook someone over the trap, like making this character who's like really brutish and should be really simple to play like way more complex and weird than he needs to be. And like, yeah, but him and Roadhog are two different characters, or two of the same-ish characters, right? Shouldn't he have a trap? I'm like, no, Junkrat's the gadget guy. Like Roadhog's just a hulking massive muscle. Like he just wants to do like simple brutish things. It's the same thing. I wouldn't want Reinhardt to be any more fucking complicated. I'm like, I have shield, I have hammer. That is what I do. I'm like, I don't want to have to think about this.
Yeah, one's the brain, one's the brawn.
Yeah, exactly. And so I would imagine, like, I'm not, when I play Sombra or something, I would imagine I'm playing a more technically, complicated character, especially just based on who she is as a character. But now it's just weird playing Roadhog. He doesn't nearly feel like how he used to be. They kind of did when the one change they did that was a good job was that when Diva first came out in her mech form, she didn't really feel like a mech because all she had was these little shotgun arms, and she could boost all over the place. And she had her what was it? I forgot what it was called, but it's her ability to like. Well, no. The missiles weren't it's her kind of shield thing. It's like she deletes projectiles in a radius in front of her, but those missiles were not part of her kit when the game first came out. They were added not so shortly afterwards. I think it was like might have been like a season or two into the game, but just a bit like when you're piloting a mech, like you expect it to be able to do a bunch of things, like Titanfall did. Like your mech could do like a bunch of different things, but like her mech had shotgun arms and it could boost, and that was about it. And when at first like her like projectile deletion ability didn't have, like, you used it and it was just used, but then it turned into like a resource thing you could turn on and off. But then they added like the mini rockets to her thing, and that made her feel way better because now she could shoot rockets out of her giant robot. That makes so much sense. It made it feel way more like you were in control of that mech, and it felt way more like you were in a mech suit than just like this dinky shotgun platform. I don't know. So when they changed that and added her ability to that was good. That was fun. Kind of the same way like Genji definitely feels like a ninja because he can double jump, he can run on walls, he can dash all over the place. You're playing as a fucking anime character when you're playing as him. So I'll compliment it. Overwatch does have good character design in that aspect. I don't know if they've done it well the more characters they've added, because even though I like playing as that new character Juno, when I briefly went back to play the game to see what she was about, she's neat, but like she's like a moon, she's an astronaut, and I guess at least in the context she was born on the moon, so she doesn't like know anything about like anything down on Earth. But like there's nothing moon about her. Like, I don't know. She's supposed to be like an astronaut, but nothing about her kit like screams astronaut to me. It's really weird. Like, she has a gun that she can shoot to heal people. I'm trying to remember her other abilities, but like I just felt like she had like a limited hover boot technology. That was probably as close as you got to like an astronaut, but I didn't really feel it. She just didn't seem like that well realized of a character as all the other ones that they've done.
She was another gravity based character, kind of like the Asylum guy. I forgot what his name was.
Fuck, I played him all the time and I forgot
Yeah.
what his name was too.
Yeah, they both have gravity powers, but they're both like vastly different. One was more of like using gravity control the area around him, while hers was to like use it to like boost her own abilities to help people,
Yeah.
like get higher places. But I don't know. I was like, that's like when I stopped playing. It was like when she was released, I played for like an hour. It's just like I'm done with this. It's like she wasn't as impressive to me either.
I thought, like I said, I thought she was fun to play, but I didn't feel like the fantasy of her being an astronaut was like there. I don't know. It just didn't.
I mean, I didn't know anything about her. I just was like, oh look, new character, and she's boring, and then I stopped playing. There is a specific character from Zenless Zone Zero that like when he first appeared, well, like when I first saw him, I like you didn't really know anything about him, and then shortly after they gave the backstory. It was like so in the beginning, I was like I didn't really think too much of him. He kind of annoyed me because he seemed very useless until his backstory was released for you to play, and then that just like gave gave me like so much more respect for him. Because in Zenless Zone Zero, there's a specific disease. It's kind of it's similar to I guess cancer, but it actually the people who have it are like significantly stronger than immunity wise, stronger than other people in the hollow area, which is just like this like a different dimension with demons and stuff. It's just like stronger in that particular area, but the drawback is that while you are stronger as a human being, your life expectancy is like a third or a quarter than the average person. So you might or might not live past 20. So it's like it's a huge drawback, but the most in that world, the most useful thing that they found for those people is to extract their spinal fluid to make a medicine to give that immunity to other people, which is completely unethical. But also, obviously, it was like an illegal thing. So there is a specific character named Asaba Harumasa, and when you first see him, he complains about working all the time, and he just seems like an incredibly lazy character. But there's his backstory explains why he is that way, because in reality he's extremely hardworking, he's incredibly smart and very skilled. The problem is that he also suffers from that disease, so he's constantly tired, and he uses his abilities actually go into that because while he is like basically a superhuman because of it, he's tired all the time. He has to take all this medicine, and his weaponry is primarily a bow that detaches into two swords. But primarily, he uses a bow so that way he doesn't tire himself out. He actually makes a joke out of it, saying, "It was like I like the bow. I can just stand in one place and shoot everyone from afar, and that's it." I was like, yeah, I was like, now I know why you like the bow so much because it doesn't tire you out like everyone else, like whipping all around and destroying everything in sight. But like that, showing his backstory is like gave me a whole much more respect for him.
So I guess the next one we got is so how does characters impact our choices on purchasing a game, if at all?
Well, I answered that one already. I think because one of the first things you're going to show off like is the characters, right? So obviously they need to be strong. In fact, if I remember correctly, I mean I didn't play it, but I know for a fact that a lot of people were pissed off when what was it? Last of Us 2 came out, and you had this conception that, especially from all the trailers and stuff, like, all right, we're gonna have more Joel and Ellie adventures, and then that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But you were buying that game for those characters because you wanted to play as those characters, right? So it's just like, well, when that didn't happen, you're gonna be a little pissed off. But I already said my piece about Xenoblade Chronicles 2, obviously. I'm trying to fish for, like, if another game, like, I'm trying, like, another game that I was that strong about the character. I mean, well, I guess it kind of hell. It was a bit more than this, but when that Farmagia game was announced, I was interested in it because I was like, oh, I really like the fairy tale art style. I'm like, that alone would just made me interested in the game to look at it further, and then I decided to buy it. So, not necessarily solely based on the character design, but enough that I probably wouldn't have been interested in it any other circumstance. So there's that.
Yeah. I mean, I could.
Corey,
Go for
I
it.
actually have a question for you. You mentioned this before, but there is a specific franchise where the creator got a comment from a friend while they were playing something, and then he was complaining that it was like, why the friend has to play an ugly character. It's like, why doesn't he have to play like a good looking character, because he would rather play a good looking character because
Oh,
he
I
just
think that was the Final Fantasy creator,
oh, okay.
because they always make like good-looking characters like across the board for the most part. Like obviously, if you're playing Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, like everybody just talks about Tifa and Aerith again. It's almost like living in 1997 when the game came. I think it was 97 when Final Fantasy VII came out, but it's like, you know, those two are notorious for like talking about that. But I'm sure people have bought Final Fantasy VII that specifically for those characters, which is, you know, not unusual. Bayonetta is something that I like playing. I thought Bayonetta's character design is really wild. I have the art books for the games. Definitely, like, I knew that it fell into a genre of game that I really enjoyed, but Bayonetta was a character that kind of just was like, what the hell? She's got like gun shoes and just so zany. Dante from Devil May Cry, like, it was just this dude in a, you know, leather jacket with a sword and guns and fighting demons, and it just, his attitude was just so cocky, and it's just like, this game's freaking like punk rock, like, this is so cool. Stellar Blade, as soon as I saw the game in general, like, obviously it has like an attractive lead character, which I was like, well, that doesn't, like, you know, I'm watching, like, you've got my attention for the trailer now, so I'm going to finish like watching what this game's about. And it's like, oh, this is a, you know, an arcade beat 'em up game, like, I like this. So it's kind of funny, but Ryza is the same way. I have all three of them. I haven't even played it yet.
Well, I already said this, but talk about a game series that was like in irrelevancy, and then someone was like, "What if we gave her really nice thighs?" And then
Yeah.
now suddenly everyone cares about that series.
Mhm.
Enough to
Well,
the point where I think that series was like one of those ones where like every game is like someone new, but then that character had like what, 3 or 4 games based on just her, because they're like, we have a gold mine here, keep using her.
Yeah, there's three. I know that there's some characters that have sequels as well. The Atelier franchise is crazy. There's so many of them. I think I was going through them the other day just to see. It's like, holy crap, man. But I definitely want to get the new one. You know, same thing. Saw the character design of the main character in the trailer, and it also has a more darker tone to it. So I was like, okay, this seems like something that, like, maybe I can get behind. I know that they have like a lot of other crazy mechanics, like the alchemy side of things, and like a lot of busy work stuff, but this one seemed a little bit more my speed, I guess. But you know, we'll see. But characters definitely will draw me in. Like, what's funny is if it's a trailer I haven't seen yet, I'll see. I'll be like scrolling through socials or whatever, and I'll see like fan art of a character that shows up, and you know you have a good character design when the fan art community is already drawing tons of it. It's like, who is this? What game is this? And then like I'll go look at it. Like when the Mouse Girl was announced for Zenless, you couldn't go anywhere without seeing her.
Well,
You know,
I
and
mean,
it's like,
I
I
actually
have,
didn't see her at all before I
yeah,
started playing.
I have that to thank for getting me into Fate in general, because I think I was following I just follow this guy who posts funny shit on Facebook, and one day I guess he started posting Fate stuff, and I saw some of the fan art of like Saber and stuff like that. I'm like, this shit looks cool. I'm like, where is this from? And then it's like, it's Fate. First, it led me to Fate Grand Order, which then led me into obviously where it originally came from with the visual novel and the anime and stuff like that. And I'm just like, holy shit. And it was just like blew my mind into like the whole fan base and how vast this whole thing is. I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. And like that does like for gacha games a lot gacha games live and die based on their character design. So they have that shit down to like a fucking science.
Yeah. The
fuck, I just had another one in my mind that I was looking into based on character design that wasn't Fate. I think I just lost it though. Oh no, I got it back. Fucking Smash Brothers, when they introduced Lucina as in Brawl, I saw her and I was like, who's Girl Marth? I'm like, she's cute. And she's cool, she's cute, she's cool. And I finally looked into Fire Emblem for the first time based on her. It's like, oh, it's Fire Emblem, what was it, Awakening, I think it was, when she was featured in. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And I looked into it, I was like, oh, I really like Fire Emblem. I mean, granted, I didn't fall head first into that fan base like I did with Fate, but I played that. I played Fates. I played a little bit of Three Houses, and I enjoyed my time with it. But that was the entire thing that got me into it. Was I'm like, oh, Lucina's cool. Where'd she come from? So I looked it up and found out where she was, and led me to the rabbit hole of Fire Emblem content. So
yeah, Fire Emblem is a franchise that I kind of was like, oh, like Roy and Marth when in Smash Bros. Melee. I was like, what is this? And then I found out it was a Game Boy Advance game. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because their characters are all really crazy. Because there's so many in the Fire Emblem game. Like each game has like such a broad cast of characters, and it's really kind of fun. Dragon Quest, I like Dragon Ball Z. I grew up with it, and then seeing characters that look like Dragon Ball Z, it's kind of like, what's this? I want to see.
Is that what drew you into Chrono Trigger originally? Was the art
Well,
style?
I think Chrono Trigger was a little different because, like, I was so young that I think that game just showed up because it was like a gift. Like, it wasn't something I saw and was like, wow, I need this. It was just something that was like, here's a Christmas gift. We thought you would like it. But I would say that people that didn't have that experience that were going through like retro games, like you can't really go anywhere without hearing about Chrono Trigger when you're like looking up game history and stuff. But if you saw it on a shelf and didn't really know and saw that art style, you'd probably just be like, these look like Dragon Ball characters. He looks like Goku or whatever.
Well,
And
it's literally what I just said with the Farmagia thing. I looked at it and
Yeah.
I was like, Fire Emblem, or not Fire Emblem, fucking Fairy Tale. I'm like, that's cool. And then
Yeah,
you look into the game.
I bought Sakura Wars because Tite Kubo made the character designs, and I love Bleach, and that's what he did. So I was like, hey, these look like Bleach characters. What's this game? And it's basically a dating sim with mechs. So I didn't, it's like, oh, okay, that's kind of weird, but I like the characters, and it got me to play it for a long time just because I was enjoying, like, it was also a genre that I didn't typically like go for, but it did get me to pick it up. So it's like, oh, maybe it got me to try a game I've never really would have sat down and played, but it was interesting enough.
The same thing for me was since I was not really heavy into RPGs as much as I should now, as I've been getting a lot more into it and growing up with it. The very first one, the one that I know for sure that grabbed me was the art design for like Shin Megami Tensei. Like those arts that they do it's really a fascinating type of style since it's like more closer to realism art that they're doing. As they try to keep it anime, but the eyes are, basically normal eyes. They're not big giant eyes and little tiny mouths and stuff. Like they try to make it proportion to the body, which is like what they're normally doing, what they don't really normally do that I see. So when I saw that on the case for a PS2, even though I was like, I don't know what this really is, I don't know what I'm getting myself into, but I saw the art style that they had and what it was showing on the PS2 cover cases, I picked it right up and, played it and kind of fell off because again, I was not really into the games of our JRPGs, but it was just the idea that it was such a pretty style that I just could not put down and I wanted to grab it. And it's still like right now, Catherine and stuff like those types of styles that they have that really works very well. Persona 5 is just very clean art and I really like that. And so what we got here.
I thought you cut out, so I didn't say anything.
Yeah,
Um,
I was gonna say the Atlas art styles of like
Yeah.
Persona and all those, because I like the Nocturne games, and we went over this a little bit ago when you were talking about when you played, recently Persona 5. Um, I love the art styles of those games. Catherine is such an amazing game. But it's another one of those things where it's like I like the art style, but I never really played the Persona games. It's kind of funny, but it just looks so good. And every time you see it, it's so recognizable. Like the Refantasio metaphor, or whatever. It's the same artist and all that.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Um,
I wouldn't like play a game specifically. Like I wouldn't play Xenoblade Chronicles just because of the two specific characters that Udon said. I was like, I would never play a game just because of the characters. It was like whether it's sexualized or not. When I did start Zenless Zone Zero, is because out of curiosity, because Corey did play it, but I'd never seen any gameplay of it. The character designs are similar across the Hoyoverse games. I did try Genshin Impact, and I did like the character designs, but I didn't like the game. And then I like the same thing goes for Honkai Star Rail. Like I like the character designs, but I just didn't like the gameplay, despite like me liking turn-based action. I just didn't like the way they did it in that one. And then that's like I started playing Zenless Zone Zero because I saw the Bernice release video, and I thought, yeah,
Bernice.
I just thought it was like it was fun. She was cute, and like it was like looked pretty ridiculous. I was curious about the game because like I did like the character designs across like all the games, but I'd never seen a single thing for Zenless Zone Zero, and I just like the way it plays and all that. So that's why I started playing that one.
I mean,
But
I'm pretty much 100% with you essentially because I don't I like all the well, not all of them, but I generally like the characters with all the Hoyoverse games. I've played Genshin, I've played Honkai, and I've played Zenless, and Zenless is the closest to what I would play if I was going to choose one of them. But generally, I'm picky when it comes to my gotcha games, and I've said this. I don't know if I said it on here before, but I really like Zenless. I love my beautiful Nicole, but she's not enough for me to play another gotcha. I play Fate, I play Pokemon Masters, and I've recently picked Nikke, Goddess of Victory, back up. Can't play all of them, and I always think the Genshin or the Hoyoverse games just ask too much of my time to play any other gotcha games besides that one. And while I really like the gameplay, I'm just not a big fan of how much time it's going to take me. More. I know it's like another gotcha game that I can't. I'm only picking up Nikke back up because Nikke is generally kind of easy just to log in, blow through all my daily stuff, and keep going, and then maybe every once in a while sit down and hardcore grind on something. Um,
yeah, it's
but
like
yeah, I'll just enjoy all the characters from a distance, not actually play the game.
yeah, there's like I mentioned it like once before. It's like the only other gotcha game that I actually played was Brave Frontier. It doesn't exist anymore, but like the main reason I even played that was just to collect the cool character designs because they were like all over the place. They were fantasy, they were modern, they were primal, they were the fantasy, what is it, like cosmic, all that, and
I,
godly,
you
demonic. It
might,
was like it was literally all over the place, but they were all sick as hell. So
you,
it's like I just wanted all of them. But
you might like Fate. They
I
don't
mean,
give two shits about the time period.
I was like, no, I was like, that's just like the variety in character design. It was like it was like I can agree that Fate has like cool character designs, but it's like I've seen I've seen a series, but it was like just couldn't get into it, especially for I saw a list of how many there are, but it was like I can't watch all of this.
Well, I mean,
Mhm.
let me sit you down because it's one of those things where it's like these are the ones that you should watch. These are the ones you can completely fucking ignore.
Was that the lost a little bit of train of thought. So one of the things that is like very important to me that I look at because now I like have to dissect a game without buying it to see if I would actually enjoy it. One of the when it comes to the character designs, there's like very specific things that I look at. Um, if the characters are designed in like a style that I like or that I actually like do stylize myself in a fashion sense, or if I can actually customize it to the way that I like it. That was like one of the major breaking points between Scarlet and Violet and Sword and Shield for me is the fact that the variety in style for Sword and Shield was much bigger than Scarlet and Violet. So
Oh yeah.
that really hit me as like I hate Scarlet and Violet because I can't customize it my character because I absolutely adore the character that I made in Sword and Shield.
Mhm.
So it's like when it comes to a game like Concord, I was like where no, I would never dress like any of those characters, and I would never. My style sense is not anywhere near that, and plus I doubt I can even customize them. So it's just like that. Like so, in terms of character designs for that game, that is a that goes in a negative points for me. Like that's way below 0. So I would never even bother touching that game. I was like, it's not that I hate hero shooters. Like I like Overwatch, like the character designs, but I would not play the game. So as a character designs is not 100% so for me, but it's not like I would ever ignore it.
I think one of the it didn't make me play it, but it kind of kept me around was Pal World. Because I mean everyone tried Pal World because you're like Pokemon with guns. Okay. You're like, let's see what this is. But they kind of I don't know what it is specifically, but they kind of like good creature collectors kind of crack the code of just like we're kind of like Pokemon, but they it's like we make the characters look either cool or cute. Like it's like make them cool enough or make them cute enough to make them, obviously, appealing. And I think that's where a lot of creature collectors kind of lose people is the characters just kind of are like ugly or just unappealing, but they kind of found the happy medium of just like these things look vaguely like Pokemon, but obviously not copyright levels of Pokemon. But it's just like I vibe in with this. Like I feel like I can get into this. If it just came out at the same time as Digimon and Pokemon, it would have been like the third contender. Or it's like and you're also distinct enough to separate yourself because I also feel like that's why people like Yu-Gi-Oh a lot is that the monster designs in that are really interesting and different from Pokemon and shit like that.
All right, so I got the final question here. So, what do you find is most important when creating a memorable villain?
You
Remember
cut out twice.
Most
there.
important.
I
Most
think
important, correct?
I think you have to make a villain like it depends on what kind of villain you're going for, but genuinely the villains I like the most. And if we could expand on this a little bit more, I know we've been having a good conversation, but we should talk about heroes as well. Like a good protagonist. But a villain, like the first thing that pops into my head is Saren from Mass Effect, because I love Saren. And in the same sense of Mass Effect, there's almost two different things. There's Saren, and then there's the Reapers in Harbinger in particular. Because Saren embodies the kind of villain I like, where it's like they're doing bad things for the right reasons, so you understand what they're doing and you understand why they're doing it, and you can even see from their point of view how they are rationalizing their actions in their mind to really get into the nitty gritty of what they're doing. So like, Saren is doing all that. He has seen the sheer power of the Reapers and what they can do and has decided that there's no fucking way we're gonna win. So that he's deciding that subordination and like appeasing them is like a way out, a way to live through this. And he does care about people, but if you also read the books that predate Mass Effect and you see Anderson and how he worked with Saren and Saren's other decisions, he always like keeping a character consistent in like their ideologies is always a good thing. So Saren is definitely a character where he's like, if I can shoot this one person but it saves 10 people, I'm shooting this one person because the numbers are what matters, And even if you ask him, it's like, well, now that one person's your friend, now what do you do? He's like, I'm still going to shoot him because I have to save these 10 people. It's just a numbers game. And so it makes him really interesting. And when Shepard, obviously if you do your Paragon and Renegade high enough, you can get through to him in the final battle where you cut out a whole phase of the boss fight. where you're just like, Saren, you have to see that we have a chance. What you're doing, the Reapers are just gonna fuck us over anyways, even if you do appease them. And then eventually, after nagging at him for long enough, you get through to him, and he's like, you know what, you're right, thank you. And he realizes like all of that comes crashing down on him like almost all at once, and he realizes all the shitty things he's done through the course of the game, and he's like, fuck, I've kind of betrayed myself in a sense. I've gone too far. So he just blows his brains out. And I really liked it, just showing that he's keeping true to what he thinks because of that. Whereas Harbinger kind of goes in the other direction, where like he's just like pure, unfeeling, cosmic horror level of chaos. Like the Reapers are coming to harvest us. They don't care about our feelings. They don't care about what we've done. There's no reasoning with them. There's no appealing to anything about them. They're coming and that's it. Like, we're coming to fuck your shit and there's nothing you can do about it because you are literally less than insects to us. It's kind of like the Joker in a way, but on a whole cosmic level. I mean, that's the essence of cosmic horror. It's just like this giant godlike being that you can't possibly fight against, except in Mass Effect, we have a chance. But that just looks on you and just doesn't care. You is unfeeling. You are food. You are nothing to them, and that's the kind of like evil antagonist I can also get behind, because how like scarily oppressive they are. And in the same sense of Saren, dipping out of video games for just a quick second, I've always been a fan of the MCU Thanos, because even putting aside, if you think about it for more than 5 seconds, snapping half of the population out of existence is kind of retarded because of all the horrible things that are going to happen as a result of that. But you saw from his perspective how he thought that was the solution, and how even as a villain, he was willing to sit down and like talk and understand his. I mean, hell, there was the scene where the Guardians were going to what was it? I think they were going to secure one of the Infinity Stones from like the Collector, but he beat them to it. Thanos could have killed them all right there, but he didn't want to. He doesn't want to kill people. He's going to let the dice roll determine it, not him. So when he gets there and he takes Gamora and he just kind of fucks with the rest of them, he could have killed them all right there, but that's not the kind of person he is. He's going to let the dice roll determine who lives and who dies. He's not going to be the one to do it unless you are directly confronting him. Like, you are standing firmly in his way. He will be rid of you, but he knows that with the Reality Stone, these guys aren't a threat to him, so he's not going to kill them.
Yeah,
and it makes a really interesting villain.
Yeah, and he had a purpose of trying to reduce the population, and that's what he was talking about. Balance is everything, and that's what he was trying to do, which was, logical.
Yeah. And there's also a sense of either making you really like or really hate a villain. Like, you want a reason to fight against them. And I think you'll resonate with this, Jordan, so feel free to jump in on it, because I'm going to go into Persona 5 and how they deal with villains, right? So in Persona 5, the first villain that you're put up against, I think his name is Kirishima. He's a PE coach that is basically, he's a threat to you, he's a threat to your friends, he abuses students, both physically and sexually. Like, he's a horrible person. And he, I believe, in the entire game is probably the one person that is the most despicable, the one that you want to do something about the most, because Persona 5, as it goes on, it kind of plays with this, like, you started out as Robin Hood, but then you've just become like a celebrity, and you're doing the same things, but for the wrong reasons to the wrong people. You start off with this guy as a villain who's done all these horrible things to you and your friends and these people, and you feel good getting back at him. You feel real good getting him to confess his crimes and fucking him over, right? Like, it feels good. And then after that, you go to like this, the artist guy who Yusuke was under, and his deal is that
Madarame,
there you go. And yeah, he's a horrible person too, because he basically he didn't kill Yusuke's mom, but he did in like a manslaughter sense. She choked out and he did nothing about it. And then he stole Yusuke and other pupils' artwork for years. Still makes him a bad guy, but probably not on Kirishima's level as far as like if we're just making evil a meter, right? Then after that, you kind of get fucked over by this mob boss, and he's just kind of a mob boss. I mean, he doesn't mean he's innocent by any means, but I mean, the worst thing he's doing is gonna fuck you over. Like, as the villains go on in Persona 5, like you pretty much have like less and less reason to fight them. Like, their evil meter almost goes down to the point where like the last person you're doing it for, you're doing it because your popularity has grown to the point where the person you're targeting is almost based on a poll, and you're like looking for an excuse to go after him. And it was Haru's father, who's just kind of a businessman who's done some crappy things. But you kind of learn that, you know, Haru, he was trying to set her up in like this arranged marriage, but you also kind of learn that he's not a super evil guy. He has distorted desires, so he has a palace, yes. But that, as you learn through the game, that doesn't also mean you're a horrible person. And honestly, if it seems that if Haru had talked to him about it, he probably would have broke it off. But he ends up like dying because of everything. And he's probably like, the reason you're there is just because of a poll. Like, you almost feel like you don't even really should be going after this guy, but that you have to because your your fans told you to, because like, bad businessman. But honestly, him comparing himself to all the other evil villains, he hasn't really done a whole lot of shit wrong. He's just a big business guy, and people don't like big business, you know? And obviously you get to your last political guy, but that goes even deeper than the rest of them. You really feel good about getting back at him, but you and it feeds back into the character, the player being like, I don't know if we should be doing this right now. It's like, I feel like we're kind of going against why we started the Phantom Thieves in the first place, but you're just like, oh, I guess it's been working out so far. We'll keep going. And then shit goes horribly sideways because X, Y, and Z reasons. And, it just leads to bad shit happening to people who probably didn't deserve it. That guy didn't deserve to die. And you kind of think it was like, well, do you even deserve us doing this to him in the first place? But yeah. I mean, do you resonate with any of that, Jordan?
No. There's the one thing that I definitely see that really, like, again, for these type of games specifically, it's just the idea that they try to go through with more realism thought to where these things do happen in real life. But as we all know, when you're listening to news and whatever it is that tells you about these breaking stories, they don't tell you the full in scoop as to what happened. And not saying that you're going to give them an excuse to do what they did, but to be able to understand that there was a purpose behind what their bad intent was, whether it was controlling or trying to destroy or whatever it was, take something for their own. They had some sort of bad event that took place that changed them to be this dark. And I really liked how it was emphasizing that when you basically had defeated them, like Kamoshida, and talking about how he was really good in his volleyball career, and it just all basically went against him, and so therefore he wanted to take it all back. Then you had Madarame, wanted to be a famous artist, but his art was just not good enough, and he just didn't see why people wouldn't take his while they would take others. And so he found out that there was a purpose behind him being successful. The only thing he could do was to steal, because he just couldn't find a way out. But he loved art, but he just couldn't figure out what would make his art worth buying. So they had just these in-depth scoops onto him that was really cool. It was very powerful. But yeah, like, you went down the line, you started just seeing more and more reason behind what they did. And some of them just, again, they didn't really have much of a villainous intent. It was like, what Udon had just said. I'm a businessman. You want to have a successful business, you're going to have to do things that might not be the greatest thing for others. Telling somebody what to do and having to force people to work extra hours and such, it's tough. But it is a business, and for those things to happen, it definitely pays mind to whether or not that is affecting you, or is it just something that you could just be like, it is what it is. So yeah, to be able to have all that going through, like, making these people have a very strong emotion towards what they do is a really powerful thing, especially like when these are the villains. They really need to make them worth your while and wait to want to finally get to that person, and it makes the game that much more sweeter.
And I guess to put it in a simple terms, like what I look for in a villain, I want a villain to make me either be totally scared and just like, holy fuck, we have a problem and we have to fix this, or preferably, especially in a heavy story-based game, I want them to make me question what I'm doing. Like, I want them to make me think about the other side of the argument. It's like, why do you think I am doing this? It's like, or how I'm doing this, why I'm doing this, like, make you really think about what they're doing. Like, if I can explain away or like completely destroy a antagonist's like belief system in like 2 words, like, that's a horrible villain. But it's like, if just making me think about the character, or at least making me sympathize. People are just like, oh, they've been doing this subversion thing, making you sympathize with the bad guys forever now. But like doing it in the correct way, not necessarily sympathize, just simply understanding why they're doing it and still being opposed to them, even though you understand why they're doing it. Just those are the villains that I love the most.
Yeah, the main villain for the Visions of Mana game was really good because basically he's on a almost the reverse pilgrimage of what you're trying to do because he's just had enough. And you can just sit there and like when you start to unravel like why is this guy so pissed? He's just doesn't want to just burn down the tree because he likes fire. It's just like, oh man, he's suffered a great deal of bullshit by the hands of everything, and he's like, that's enough. It's kind of like Kratos in a sense. He's a really good villain hero. He's like, I'm gonna go kill all these damn gods because they're that's enough. And it's kind of funny, but when I like some great villains that stand out to me. There's the obvious Sephiroth, and I think people just like him because he's super cool. Like, he's just like giant sword, cloak, long hair. Like, he's very menacing because he doesn't have he doesn't really monologue. Like in the newer games, he kind of has a lot of weird quippy things because it's just like, oh, this dude, he just comes and drops some weird like thought bombs on you and disappears, and he's just super powerful because they're doing this spin-off of like alternate timeline thing. But when you're first introduced to Sephiroth, every time you go into a room after he's been there, everybody's dead and there's blood everywhere, and you're just like, are we sure we're following the right guy? Like, he just gets shit done, and that's why, like, one of the most impactful things in Final Fantasy VII is when you have to find a chocobo to cross the plains because there's a giant snake that will kill you because it's very strong according to the level that you're at when you get out of Midgar. So you find a chocobo, you get past all the snakes. And they kind of do this in the Final Fantasy remake, but it goes to a little scene and you see a snake impaled on a tree, and they're just like, "Did Sephiroth do this?" It's like, why are we following this guy? It's like, what are you gonna do when you catch him? Because if this is what he's doing to everything that makes you feel small, this is not going to go well. He's very imposing. But another one that's really good is Kefka from Final Fantasy VI. Because he's just so weird and just crazy. He's dressed like a jester. You kind of just think he's he does take a lot of tropes from like the Joker, but you're kind of like, how is this guy a problem? And then he just starts going like off. He actually achieves his goal for the most part, and you have to regroup and try to like bring him down. So you have to, like, the second part of that game, you have to live in a world of ruin, which is like, hey, remember that time we all failed at stopping this villain from like killing everybody, and now that we have to look at the consequences of our actions? It's like he's such a good villain for that because he's just a psychopath. There's no reasoning with him because he's just pure chaos. And instead of him sitting up there and being like, oh, my weakness is this or whatever, he's just a crazy person that wants to kill things. And like, I understand evil for evil's sake, but he's not like the main villain at the beginning of that game. He's just this goofy ass dude, and there's this other, like, you're up against the Empire kind of thing. And then once Kefka kind of takes the reins, you're just like, oh, we have a different problem. And I love that kind of switch too when you're going into villains, because it's like, obviously you have the well kept and collect evil like coordinator. And then there's the dude that's just basically on a leash, but once he gets off of it, you're like, ah, fuck, And those are always fun. It's like the villain that's a problem rather than the villain that's just like, I'm stealing because, I lost my cat.
Yeah.
I that's kind of me why I like 10 is that the Final Fantasy 10 is it has that impending doom sense where, like, Udon was talking about with the Reapers. That was kind of the one thing what made me really fall in love with number 3 out of all of them. Some people don't really care for it, but I just the fact that there's something that is just so frightening. It's so much more powerful than you could even imagine, and it's coming to kill you is just the most powerful thing to me that just really makes things seem so much smaller to where you're just like, is there really a chance? Do we really have a chance of beating this? And so you're basically just holding on to the edge of your seat, like, holy shit, I don't, are we gonna win? And you're just like constantly questioning yourself because of what's happening, destroying the Citadel like with the blink of an eye, the Sin destroying an entire city just with a one blast. You're just like, holy shit, like just killing everything. And that's like one thing to me that really makes things power when you see that kind of stuff happen.
Like the Reapers are such a great threat, and they're not like, I don't even see the Reapers as like a villain, as more of an imposing force, and that's like
Force of nature.
and it's the same thing. Yeah, it's like fighting a hurricane, and then like Sin in Final Fantasy X is such a crazy concept. 'Cause she's like, man, this is like, we have to complete this pilgrimage or else he's going to kill everything. And it's very similar in the aspect of Mass Effect, having to, like, we got to get as many people together as we can to throw bodies at this, otherwise it's going to be a problem. Because to be fair, I'm not really a fan of Seymour in Final Fantasy X. Like,
Nobody is.
he's trying to. It's kind of like they made him. One, I think his hair is really stupid. His character design is weird because he's like part Guado or whatever the name of those things are, where they have kind of long
Guado,
arms. He talks kind of like just weird. Like, I understand he's like this menacing, like, wizard kind of guy, but like he has this weird floaty voice, and I just didn't really care about him too much. I think he was just over designed for like the main villain that you're chasing throughout the game or interacting with throughout the game, because he's more of the recurring character you battle rather than like the thing that you're dealing with, which is Sin and like the real dark themes of what Final Fantasy X starts to bring like to the foreground after you meander about for 40-50 hours. But I do enjoy that game a lot because the journey and the characters in it are so awesome. But the villain, I'm just like, oh, here's that blue-haired dude again who I'm supposed to be worried about. He's like, oh, it's me, Seymour. And I'm like, get out of here.
Yeah. Go buff your nails.
Go buff your nails. Throw your ball at him. How disrespectful of any character in general. Waka's so disrespectful because he's just chucking like dodgeballs at everything.
So there are two specific characters. One is just plain evil, while the other one was evil. But it's just the one who was evil is just like one of my favorite characters in the entire series. And it's Kingdom Hearts. Not too specifically, but
shocker.
No, it's like, well, it's like two specific characters, like, and Sora is the main character. He's not my favorite. I don't have that much of a problem with him, but my more favorite character is Riku, which is his best friend. In the beginning, Riku did turn evil, more for his own gain, because he couldn't stand being stuck on an island. He wanted to actually go on an adventure, and he would do or agree to anything to have it for himself. That he ended up going into the darkness and betraying everyone close to him in order to have it. Which, I mean, personally, I can't blame him as much. I was like, yeah, it's like I'd probably lose my mind being stuck on that fucking island forever. I was like, I want to go on an adventure too, but I was like, to give up everything to get it, I'm not so sure about that. But in the beginning, he's like, he becomes evil. He just constantly poisoned and manipulated to go further into the darkness to gain more power, so no one could stop him. But eventually, he does have a turnaround. But the interesting thing is that kind of like and Miles Morales is just like, it was like, obviously it's constantly told to him that he was a mistake and all that, and all his decisions are just wrong. But he makes that line that I still like very much, is like, I'm gonna do my own thing. It's like, which is kind of what Riku does, that despite the fact that he was born into darkness for several selfish reasons, he still follows it because it's just what he's used to. But even though darkness is like seen as an evil aspect, he still uses it to fight for the light. So it's kind of like being a double agent. Because in Chain of Memories, he was given a choice by a character named Diz to continue the same path that he has been on or change the path, and then he just ignores both of them and goes for his own path. And he just creates a third option, which was his option, to use the darkness to correct the mistakes that he's made. So it's like I just like his character, and I just think that's a really interesting thing to do. Is like despite that you're doing the wrong things, you're doing it for the right reasons. So it's like always it's like an anti-hero. And the other character, which is just like a totally evil character, is obviously well, no longer the main villain anymore. Was Xehanort, who is just it's the same ideology that like the world is flawed and it has to be restarted with obviously him as a ruler, which it's fine using like a copy and paste like ideology like that, but it's like the way you do it, it can be the interesting part of it, which the way he does it is like is absolutely ridiculous. Like he affects at least 20 different people's lives in his own ambitions, and then some of those lives are just his past selves, that is basically his team. His team is just his older self and then different periodic moments of his life. So it's like his older self, his middle-aged self, and his much younger self, like, and everything in between. It's just like that's your team, is just him across time. And then the fact that he was so evil that he affected over 20 other people's lives, including some lives that he in his own plan created, and including other past selves who, when you actually beat them for the last time, explained, it was like, we really didn't have a choice. We're just so afraid of our older self. It's like, Jesus Christ, the fact that your past self is afraid of your older self is kind of interesting. But it's like a truly evil villain, despite whatever reasons. It's like the way that he did it is just actually pretty scary. Just seeing that person, it was like, yeah, there's no changing his mind. He's just gonna do this regardless, and it didn't matter whose lives he affected, because in the end, it was like they'll just be erased anyway.
All right. So now that we're coming up to the end of our closing, we got question number 1 for our trivia. In Elden Ring, which character is known as the Blade of Miquella? Is it A, Milena, B, Radon, C, Godfrey, or D, Ranni?
It's Miquella, right? Because she
Yeah, it's
yells at
Miquella.
you 1,000
I must
times
have
until
missed. Yeah, I might have mistyped that. All right, cool.
Kindly
Miquella.
Miquella. All right. Question number 2.
No, we didn't answer it. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, it
No.
was we correct?
Oh no, it was well, I wrote down Milena, so if it's Miquella, then that's probably what it is. I was in a hurry.
No. It's the blade of Miquella.
Oh, Miquella.
Yeah.
Okay.
What you're correcting is the blade of part.
All right. Well.
Pretty sure it was Milena though.
All right. Yeah. No, I ruined it. There we go. Sweet. All right. So answer to is Milena. Question number 2: who is the main protagonist in Deathloop, tasked with breaking the time loop? Is it A, Juliana, B, Colt, C, Alexis, or D, Igor?
Colt.
Yeah, I would say Colt.
Answer is Colt. Third and final.
Sucks anyway.
Third,
I played that game a little bit because it's from the people who did what was it, Dishonored, and it's not the same.
yeah, I've seen a lot of funny videos.
Super buggy.
We're kicking people like.
It wasn't really buggy, much like it was just not as interesting as Dishonored was. I don't know. I just found it boring.
All right, the third and final question. In Horizon Forbidden West, who is the leader of the Var Zenith group that Aloy must confront? Is it A, Tilda Vandermeer, or B, Gerard Bohi, C, Eric Visser, or D, Beta?
A? That was an interesting name. I just picked it.
Any
I'm
other?
gonna go with.
I
I'm gonna guess-
abstain.
I'm gonna guess B.
The answer was B. Gerard Bohe.
Damn it.
Which talk about a game that the character design did the opposite. And about how what was it, the main character's name is Aloy, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Aloy. It's not how she looks. It's just the fact that I was over at Corey's house and I fucking you were playing it and you were at some kind of fucking point in the game where she was like doing some kind of like trial she was running with a bunch of other characters, and holy fuck, I hate characters that constantly fucking talk to themselves. It drives me up a wall. She's like, one of the characters is like, there's a ledge over there, I should go over there, it can get me where I'm going, or something's like, yeah, I can see that, thank you. Like I can make that inference by myself, please stop telling me what to do. And she just would not shut the fuck up the entire time of doing that little segment, and I was just like, God, I'm never playing this game. She just annoys the crap out of me.
All right. Okay. All right. So, well, I guess we'll be wrapping it up. Be sure to follow us on Spotify, Twitter, and YouTube channel. Be notified of new episodes. Hit us up with them 5 stars, and don't forget to subscribe on our YouTube channel. And for all you gamers out there, just remember to keep exploring, keep playing, keep listening. Until next time, this is the Mediocre Rumble Brothers podcast signing off. Thanks for listening.
Hey, this is Corey, and thanks for checking out Mediocre Rumble Brothers. If you liked the video, please drop a like, and if you didn't, that's fine too. If you'd like us to talk about any specific games, drop a comment below, or feel free to discuss your experience with the games that we've mentioned in the episode. You can also listen to our episodes prior to YouTube on our Spotify. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you again soon.